To each their own, but this wasn't a slay. I'm all for doing shitty things, okay? This book is truly just words on a page. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Lynn. Welcome back to this channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about the worst books that I read in 2022. Yes, I know this is late. I don't care. Let's move on. Last year, I read 66 books, and out of those 66, I think I have about 10 books on this list, so it's not too bad. Without further ado, let's get started. The first one on my list is a very popular one, and it's The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. I thought this book was really heavy on the exposition. There is so much info dumping throughout the entire book, honestly. It's not even just in the beginning. And the writing, while good, it's also very dense. So dense that you somehow lose the meaning of the sentence halfway through. It's like the author didn't know that she could end a sentence and start a new one. So there would be like a bunch of commas, semicolons, parentheses. It's like, girl, just make a new one. Like, goddamn. You can end a sentence. It's okay to end a sentence. That's what periods are for. Please use them. Please, thank you. My entire experience with this book felt like I was being spoon-fed, especially with the characters. I feel like one way the book could have worked exceptionally well for me is if the characters had been up to par with what the author wanted to convey. You could tell what she wanted to do with the characters and who she wanted them to be, but the execution just wasn't there. All of them just ended up being really boring, pretentious know-it-alls that didn't really know anything at all. It's probably the worst reading experience when I have to read the point of view of characters that pretend they know everything and that are so arrogant, but there is just no substance there. You know, there's nothing to back up their claims of grandeur, and it just makes the reading experience super annoying and insufferable. It feels like I was given the outline of the characters instead of getting to know them with their personalities being weaved in throughout the plot and their interactions or whatever. Instead, I felt like I was getting bullet points of who the author wanted me to think the characters are. That's why it just doubly didn't work for me, because there was no plot. I was halfway through still confused as to what the hell we were doing here. The magic system is very vague. At some point, I think they like make a portal or like a black hole or something, and then they just move on, and there's no point to it whatsoever. This book has a lot of 4 stars reviews, 4 and 5 stars, and a lot of them are like, oh my god, I didn't understand anything that was going on, but I loved it. I wish I had that experience, but that wasn't me. I was just bored. I have an entire and in-depth Goodreads review. If you want to go check that out, I'll leave it in the description below. I want to mention, The Atlas Six is the first book that I read last year, and it was a 2 stars. And I fucking hate that, because the year before, in 2021, was also a 2 stars. It was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McKiston. And I don't know why my reading years start off so bad. And it's not that I'm not picking things that I don't think I'll like. I'll genuinely pick something that I think I will enjoy, and it just falls flat for me, and I hate it. Anyways, the next book is Twice Shy by Sarah Hogle. I also gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. After reading You Deserve Each Other, which is Sarah Hogle's debut, which I loved, I was really looking forward to reading Twice Shy, and I was so disappointed. I read it in February, I think, so very early on into the year, and it pissed me off so much. I was reading more about this woman's fictitious life in her head than about her actual life and the actual romance, and I was just like, can we move on? Like, I don't care. If I wanted to read fan fiction, I would have literally opened AO3. I literally have a bookmark page on my phone. So Twice Shy is like a grumpy sunshine romance, and I know this isn't the first time you've heard this conversation, but like, with the rise of tropes in published literature, I feel like a lot of authors have the tropes at first and then try to fit their characters into these tropes, where it's more detrimental to the characters and also the subsequent story, because you try to fit them in so much that that's all that they are, and they have nothing else going for them. They have no nuance. I mean, I'm not a writer, so I can't really say much on the writing aspect of it, but me as a reader, I would prefer if an author were to write characters not based on tropes, because then it kind of traps them in these boxes that you've made up for them, and doesn't really give them a lot of room to breathe and to like be people, you know what I mean? Anyways, this is starting to be another conversation, but yes, I feel like we've kind of lost that natural progression. I'm not a writer, so you don't have to listen to me, but as a reader, that's how I feel. Number 3 on my list is Fiona and Jane by Jean Chen-ho. I also gave this a 2 stars. Lots of 2 stars. So not much happens here. The chapters are super long and boring, and they do nothing to draw you into the story or the characters, and that's from the beginning. Even though Fiona and Jane had distinct characterization, I feel like they were still the same person. I feel like this book was just very mismarketed, and one, I didn't know that they were in short stories, like short essay collections, and two, the essays are not chronological. So we go from when Fiona's an adult to when Jane is a young girl to when Fiona's a young girl to when Jane is an adult, and it's like, I don't even know these people, like why should I care? So when I went into it, I was expecting an exploration of female friendships, but that barely ever happens because one, Fiona and Jane barely spend time together on page, especially as adults. So most of the short stories are focused on their relationships with a bunch of boring and uninteresting men, which makes for a very unmemorable reading experience. I really didn't care about any of the characters. I barely remember any of them. The pacing was also very weird, and the POV change is also strange, but there's no reason for it either, or at least not any reason that I can see that works, because one point of view is like in third person and the other point of view is in first person, and I'm like, why was that choice made? What was the point of that? And also, again, the fact that the timeline isn't chronological. Overall, I just feel like nothing really flowed well for this book, which is disappointing. Moving on to the next book, and it's Fallen Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. I also gave this a 2 stars, and you may notice that this is the first physical book that I have here, and that is the main reason why I even read this book. I bought this, I think, way back in 2016. When was this published? I don't know, but I got it right when BookTube got its hands on it, and the way BookTube was talking about this book, you'd think that it was like something so amazing and great, and you know, maybe it was for its time, but it's definitely not timeless. It's definitely the bootleg YA version of Game of Thrones. It even has the good old prince and princess incest relationship in this, which I was unaware of, unfortunately, going into this book. Anyway, as I was saying, I really only read this because I had the physical copy and I bought it so long ago and I never read it. So I was like, I'm in the fantasy mood and I kind of want to read something physical. I want to hold it in my hands. Let me get into this, you know, maybe it still holds up after all these years. That is a lie. It's terrible. And also, I looked up the series. This has so many books and I've never heard anyone talk about the rest of the books in the series. This book is not good. It's very formulaic, very typical. You can be predictable while still being enjoyable. This was not. That's all I have to say about this book. So next book on my list is The Portrait of a Mirror, and I gave this a 1 star. My review literally says bad. It's about these two couples that meet. They're married and they basically like cheat on each other. That's the synopsis, and it's supposed to include themes of narcissists and like Greek mythology and stuff, but there was none of that here. This is another one also that I felt like was so heavy on the exposition. I'm not gonna read you all of it, but I copy and pasted a section of the book where it's like the intro to a chapter, and I swear to you, every single chapter started that way. I'm just gonna read you the first paragraph because it's a lot and I don't want to subject you to this. The single greatest innovation in modern workplace sexual politics was the holy union of invention and practical application that is the fully corporate sanctioned enterprise instant messenger. Here, the technical capability of internet-wide GUI-based messaging a la powwow, ICQ, and most nostalgically from a millennial perspective, that ancient maker and breaker of reputations and hearts, the AOL instant messenger met a user base essentially trapped for 8+ hours per day at a computer, supposed to be doing things that they didn't especially want to do. This is basically a paragraph talking about how AOL made it so much easier for coworkers to interact with each other, and it's like, why did you have to give me 3 paragraphs of this? What the fuck? This isn't an academic paper, bitch. There's 2 more paragraphs like this, but I will spare you. Why is a book about infidelity talking about shit like that? Like, why is it talking like that? I don't want to talk about this book anymore. Book number 6 is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I honestly don't know what people are talking about when they rave about this book. I was expecting something profound, but in the end, all you get is a repetitive dialogue and bland female characters with no personality. Hearing that it was originally a play, I can see how that might translate a bit better, but with the format that I read it in, it just wasn't that great of an experience. Moving on, number 7 is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. I said it before and I'll say it again. Killing a man because he doesn't want to have sex with you anymore isn't girl boss. It's giving femcel. You know, for a book about cannibalism and murder, it is so fucking boring. The main character, Dorothy, is a food critic, and at first I was loving how the author would was weaving her profession into her being a murderer and a cannibal. I thought it was brilliant. But over time, I kept wondering, like, when are we going to get to the murder? When are we going to get to the cannibalism? All she was doing was name dropping, talking about really high-end dishes and meals. Like, bitch, can we move on? Like, this isn't a cookbook. Get to it. I didn't come here for food recipes, okay? Why would I take advice from a cannibal? When we finally get to the murdering and eating, it's either too short or it's too fucking long and detailed, and both are boring. Another thing, I'm surprised no one has mentioned this before. I haven't really heard many people talk about it, but there's this Jewish man that she kills, and she's very weird about it. Like, she's very weird about the way that she kills him, and she's very weird about him being Jewish. The way that she kills him feels very ethnically motivated. And I mean, it is. I did read a few reviews that do talk about it, but for the majority, no one is really mentioning that. But it felt weird to me. Anyways, I think pretentiousness and arrogance can be fun when it's deserving, but you can't be pretentious and arrogant with nothing to back it up. To me, Dorothy was just a washed up hag who was mad because the market crashed and she couldn't do her job anymore. Whatever. Also, when we get to the reason why she decided to become a serial killer and a cannibal, it is about the most boring fucking thing I've ever heard, and it makes no sense. It is so random and it comes out of nowhere. Not to mention that her first kill, maybe I shouldn't say that, maybe it's a spoiler. If you know about her first kill, it's so lame the way that it happens. You're not cool. You're not interesting. Despite you being a murderer and a cannibal, you're still boring. Like, how you managed to do that is insane to me. To each their own, but this wasn't a slay. Next book is Mona by Paula Oleksairac. I think I'm saying that right. I gave this book a 1 star. This book is truly just words on a page. Just words on a page, just vibes. I'm just not getting what these people are getting out of these books. I just don't understand. It's very popular on Bookstagram. It's very lit fic, but it makes no sense, which I guess is on brand for literary fiction. Anyways, throughout the reading experience, I kept asking myself, is this book bad, or did I just not get it? Or did I not get it because the book is bad? Is this book bad because it makes 0 sense, hence why I didn't get it? And I'm thinking it's the latter, folks. Mona is about this woman named Mona who published a book the year before. It became very popular. Now she's working on her next book in the next year, and she's having a little trouble finding the creative juices. But she's been invited to like this author convention or whatever because they're gonna give out an award. And this book is supposed to be like an exploration on how society or like the media exploits representation. It's basically like talking about it in a satire kind of way, how society, Hollywood, the media, whatever, has kind of monetized people's identities. I'm not sure. That's what people say. But I read this book and I can't tell you what it's about, honestly. I kid you not, there is a part in the book where one of the authors says that being a writer, a woman, and fat is being trans. What the fuck? Also, none of these are mutually exclusive. What are we talking about here? I feel like everything that Mona went through was there just to give the book an edge. Number 9 is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I gave this a 2.25 out of 5 stars. This book is about Miri and Leah, who are married, and Leah, who's a marine biologist, comes back from a deep sea mission completely changed. I thought this book had amazing writing, and it did a great job conveying the disconnect between Miri and Leah, and also Leah with herself and the loneliness of it all. But ultimately, it didn't do anything for me because it's told in such a mechanical and uninteresting and almost detached way. I felt like there was such a lack of empathy on Miri's side when it came to Leah's condition and predicament. She was very woe is me, like, my wife abandoned me, my wife clearly loves her job more than she loves me, and it's like blah blah blah. Like, girl, once you get the context of what really happened to Leah, it's like, be for real. Let's relax a little bit. It's not about you. I mean, it is about her because they're living together and that's her wife, and I get it, but what are you doing about it? Nothing. And that's another thing that pissed me off with Miri's character. She is so fucking passive. This is part of my notes. 31% in, I said, people calling this devastatingly romantic. Where? It's more of a loss of romance, honestly. There's a lot of dull passages that do nothing for me. It's not interesting or informative or intriguing. I'm just bored and sleepy. It's dual POV, and we get Miri's point of view after Leah comes back and Leah's point of view while she's on the mission. Miri, all she does is reminisce about the past. past, and it's all so boring. Even the dates that she described, so boring. I didn't feel any sort of chemistry or love between them. They just felt like two people living together, honestly. I think it's more of the POV's fault, because when I was reading about Miri during Leah's chapter, I kind of felt a connection. But when Miri was talking about Leah in the past, she wasn't really giving me anything. You know, there was no emotion, there was no chemistry. It was just very robotic, which ultimately wasn't beneficial to the story and like their relationship as a whole, because Miri's chapters are a lot longer than Leah's, and Leah only talks about Miri maybe like once or twice in her chapters. So I'm getting the full scope of their relationship through Miri's eyes, and Miri does nothing to make them sound interesting or compelling or even in love. Something I said in my notes is, so far what I've gathered and am feeling is that Leah was the interesting person in the relationship and Miri offered little to nothing, at least from her perspective, because Leah's the one doing most of the initiating and talking and planning. In the flashbacks, Leah is the one that's initiating every single thing. Overall, Miri's POV was just her complaining about literally everything without doing a single thing to help herself. Also, I thought she was quite rude, especially when talking about Carmen, who's one of her only friends. The way she talks about Carmen is very condescending. It's almost like she can't stand her. If you don't like this person, why are you even hanging out with them? You know what I mean? It's just very annoying. Really quickly, I want to read you part of someone's 1-star review for this book. This could have been horror, but it didn't land well at all. It wasn't fast enough and didn't move enough to be suspenseful. Miri's reaction to horrific situations was so mild that it didn't land as horror, but the situation was too horrific and weird for this to be an exploration of grief, which I think is what it was going for. And this is exactly how I feel about this book. Final thoughts. I think on an academic and philosophical level, I can understand why this is appealing, because I see the themes of depression and denial and debilitating grief to the point where you become just as passive as Miri, where you feel like you're stuck, you're just operating off of routine. But on an enjoyment and emotional level, absolutely not. There was just no sense of urgency when the situation required frantic, immediate urgency. At no point was Miri asking any sort of questions or trying to figure anything out. Literally the most passive bitch around. Honestly, if I were in Leah's situation, I would not want to be married to Miri, because clearly this bitch would be completely useless. No thank you. Now we've come to the last book on this list, and it's Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. There's a line in this book that goes, "Miscommunication is for the straights," and then you watch as all of these non-straight characters proceed to miscommunicate the entire time. What is the point of fake dating if it's not between the in-game couple? That is one thing that this book has taught me. I don't care if you guys are fake dating if it's not the in-game couple. Like, what's the point? Another reason why I didn't enjoy this book, the initial romance is told in flashbacks. This book is very repetitive. The playlist, the moon smiles, the mentions of Taylor Swift, how many times the love interest is described as being loud. I counted approximately 22 times that the love interest is described as loud, out of 37 times that the word loud is used. I get it, she's loud. She can't whisper. Also, it's very predictable. I guessed pretty much every single thing that happened in this book. Jack's music taste was also a crime, and I definitely didn't need 100 mentions of her shitty generic music choices. I didn't really like any of the characters either. Everybody was dogpiling on the main character when everything wasn't even her fault, especially for that one specific thing that Jack got mad at her for, which made zero sense. And it's like, why are you more mad than me? She wanted to act all high and mighty, and I'm like, bitch, you're just as guilty. Anyways, I didn't like Andrew either. I started liking him, and then he opened his mouth multiple times. Also, Dylan, don't like them. I don't like them. They were so rude from the jump, very disrespectful for no reason. It just felt like everybody already knew that the relationship was fake, but they were just pretending that they didn't, because none of what happened was plausible if we believed that Ellie and Andrew were actually engaged. I feel like this could have been done so well, but the execution was terrible. It's not even the fact that they were doing terrible things, it's the way that they reacted to them. I'm all for doing shitty things, okay? I am all for like cheating, Wait, maybe we're going too far. But like, let me finish. Okay, stick with me here. I'm all for doing terrible things, including cheating in books, as long as the reaction makes sense. The reaction in this for everything that was happening was nonsensical. I think the most annoying people on the planet live in Portland. Anyways, I didn't like this book. It was a miss for me. That is it for this video. Please let me know what were some of your worst books of 2022, if we have any in common. If some of my worst books were some of your best books, also let me know, and I will see you all in another video. Bye!